this video, I am going to tell you about Class 7 Geography Lesson 3, Our Changing Earth. Changing Earth. The lithosphere is broken into the number of plates known as lithospheric plates. These plates move around very slowly, just a few millimeters each year. The movement of plates is because of the movement of the molten magma inside the Earth. The molten magma inside the Earth moves in a circular manner. A small activity. Take a small colored paper pellet and put it in a beaker half filled with water. Place the beaker on the tripod stand and heat it. As the water warms it, we will observe that the paper pellet is moving upward along with the warm layers of the water and then sinks back along with the cooler layer of water. The molten magma inside the earth moves in a similar manner. The movement of these lithospheric plates causes changes on the surface of the earth. The earth movements are divided on the basis of the forces which cause them. The forces that act in the interior of the earth is known as endogenic forces. The forces that act on the surface of the earth are called exogenic forces. Endogenic forces are sometimes produced sudden movements and the other time produces slow movements. Sudden movements like earthquakes and volcanoes cause mass destruction over the surface of the earth. The volcano is a vent opening in the earth's crust through which molten material erupts suddenly. Earth movements are divided into two types: endogenic forces and exogenic forces. Endogenic forces are also divided into two types: sudden forces and diastrophic forces. Sudden forces are earthquake, volcano, and landslides. Diastrophic forces are building mountains. And exogenic forces examples are erosional and positional, river, wind, sea waves, and glaciers. Similarly, when the lithospheric plates move, surface of the earth vibrates. The vibration can travel all around the earth. These vibrations are also known as earthquakes. The place in the crust where the movement starts is called the focus. The place on the surface above the focus is called the epicenter. Vibration travels outwards from the epicenter as waves. Greatest damage is usually closest to the epicenter and the strength of an earthquake decreases away from the center. Do you know there are three types of earthquakes: P waves or longitudinal waves, S waves or transverse waves, L waves or surface waves. Properties of waves. Longitudinal wave. A wave in which the medium particles vibrate in the direction of the line of advance of wave. Transverse wave. Transverse wave motion in which all points on a wave oscillate along paths at right angles to the directions of the wave's advance. Surface ripples on water, seismic as secondary waves, and electromagnetic example radio and light waves are examples of transverse waves. Surface wave. A surface wave is a seismic wave that is trapped near the surface of the earth. Do you know the an earthquake is measured with a machine called seismograph. The magnitude of the earthquake is measured on the Richter scale. An earthquake of 2.0 or less can be felt only a little. An earthquake over 5.0 can cause damage from things falling, and 6.0 or higher magnitude is considered very strong, and 7.0 is classified as a major earthquake. Here in the picture, we can see the different parts of the seismograph. Our changing Earth. Although earthquakes cannot be predicted, the impact can certainly be minimized if we are prepared beforehand. Some common earthquake prediction methods adopted locally by people include studying animal behavior. Fish in the ponds get agitated, snakes come to the surface. Earthquake, a case study. This is a case study. Earthquake hits Bhuj. A massive earthquake measuring 6.9 on Richter scale hit Bhuj town on 26 January 2001. School worst affected. At least 971 students and 31 teachers are feared to have lost their lives following the collapse of the school buildings. Goods relief efforted blighted. 3 days after the earthquake, concern rose about food, blankets, and medical supplies not reaching everyone. Destruction of Bhuj. Phone lines, water pipelines, and power stations, transmission lines were knocked out. Fire in the city. Hundreds of fire stations started at charcoal cookers oven tube. Emergency declared in quake zone. The president declares a state of emergency. CM appeal to the center. Gujarat appeals for the financial help. The chief minister of Gujarat has launched an appeal to the center to help with the deal with the disaster. Here we can see the picture. Like building is collapsing. Earthquake preparedness. Where to take shelter during an earthquake. Safe spot under a kitchen counter, table or a desk against an inside corner or wall. Stay away from fireplaces, areas around chimneys, windows that shutter, including mirrors and picture frames. Be prepared. Spread awareness among your family, friends, and family members, and face any disaster confidently. Major landforms. The landscape is being continuously worn away by two processes, weathering and erosion. Weathering is the breaking of the rocks on the Earth's surface. Erosion is the wearing away of the landscape by different agents like water, wind, and ice. The eroded material is carried away or transported by water, wind, etc., and eventually deposited. This process of erosion and deposition create different landforms on the surface of the Earth. Work of a river. The standing water in the river erodes the landscape. When the river tumbles at steep angle at a very hard rock or down a steep valley side, it forms a waterfall. As the river enters the plain, it twists and turns, forming large bends known as meanders. Due to erosion and deposition along the sides of the meander loop comes closer and closer. In due course of time, the meander loop cuts from the river and forms a cut-off lake, also called an oxbow lake. Here we can see the picture of running water in the river. At times, the river overflows its banks. This leads to the flooding of the neighboring areas. As it floods, it deposits layers of fine soil and other material called sediments along its banks. This leads to the formation of a flat, fertile floodplain. The raised banks are called leaves. As the river approaches the sea, the speed of the flowing water decreases and the river begins to break up into a number of streams called distributaries. The river becomes so slow that it begins to deposit its load. The collection of sediments from all the mouths forms a delta. The erosion and the deposition of a sea waves gives rise to coastal landforms. Sea waves continuously strike at the rocks, cracks develop. Over time, they become larger and wider. Thus, hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. As these cavities become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remain, thus forming sea arches. Further, erosion breaks the roof and only the walls are left. These walls are features are called stacks. The steep, rocky coast, rising almost vertically above the sea water, is called a sea cliff. Here we can see the picture. Break of ice. Glaciers are rivers of ice which do erode the landscape by bulldozing soil and stones to expose the solid rock below. Glaciers carve out deep hollows there. As the ice melts, they get filled up with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains. The material carried by the glacier, such as rocks, big and small sand and silt, get deposited. These deposits from glacier moraines. Work of wind. An active agent of erosion and deposition in the deposition is wind. In deserts, you can see rocks in the shape of a mushroom, commonly called the mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock more than the upper part. Therefore, such rocks have narrower base and wider top. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. Sorry, this point is repeated. Work of wind. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited in low hill-like structures. These are called sand dunes. When the grains of sand are very fine and light, the wind can carry over very long distances. When such land is deposited in large areas, it is called loess. Large deposits of loess is found in China. So thank you friends. If you like this video, please like, share, comment and subscribe. Thank you.